this is Dr. Blake Jones, and thank you for joining us today on the Guided Podcast. I'm joined by my friend Christian Countzler here, who has really started a unique kind of organization that sprang from your own recovery journey. And so I want to kind of start there, if we could, Christian, and talk with us a little bit about your journey of recovery.
Sure. I'm very open about it now. So I grew up in a small town in western Kentucky, very poor, had an alcoholic and drug addicted father, basically a broken home. My mom did the best she could to try to give us some sort of a sense of normalcy, but that was hard to do when Dad would come home and be angry and everything else. So I grew up with a ton of fear. I talk about this a lot, and the longer I've worked in addiction, since I was a little kid, I never felt normal. I never felt okay inside. I could be in a room full of people and feel absolutely alone. So I very quickly started looking for means to not feel like that. And, I can compare it to, when I was a child, if I could get that pair of tennis shoes, well, then I'd be okay. Lead up into high school, if I could make that sports team, if I could get that girlfriend, constantly searching for outside means to make the inside of me better. And those things would work temporarily, but eventually, the new car smell would wear off, and I'd be stuck with me again. I can remember looking in the mirror as an 8, 9, 10-year-old child and not liking what I saw. And I have no explanation for that. I just didn't like myself. I stayed away from drugs and alcohol in high school for the most part. I would hold a beer at a party to fit in, because I have to fit in. Very, very little, recreational things that high school kids did. I ended up earning a scholarship to Western Kentucky University, where I was introduced to cocaine. And that's when things really started to kind of change. I had managed, the recreational stuff for the most part. But once I started using cocaine, I quickly started to want to do that every single day. So much so that 3 semesters into school, I was stealing textbooks to sell back to the bookstore so I could buy more cocaine. I lost my scholarship and didn't really know what I was going to do. I knew I wasn't going to go home. I didn't want to go back to that. So the military had always appealed to me. So I ended up walking into the recruiter station and enlisting in the Army. I got to the Army and things got better for a little while, but eventually, things caught up to me again. I spent 6 years in the Army and then got out, and really didn't know what I was going to do then. By that time, I had married a girl, had a kid, so I ended up doing the one thing I grew up telling myself I would never do, which was underground coal mining. Where I'm from, that's basically the only job that a man who needs to support a family without an education could get. And so I ended up doing that. My very first day underground. This is such a prototypical, unfortunate, sad Kentucky story. My very first day underground, I hadn't been there 15 minutes and a guy approached me. He held out his hand and there were some pills in it. And he said, "Here, man, you're going to need these." And they were Lortabs. I had never done pills. It wasn't anything, I was drinking, but I wasn't doing anything else. And then, I was quickly told where to get them, which is make an appointment with this doctor and he'll give you this. This is back, early 2000s, when the opioid epidemic was really running rampant.
Yeah.
And that began a 10-year spiral of addiction that I didn't realize was really going on, because I'm getting these things from a doctor, and I'm going home at night. I'm going to work every day. I'm supporting my family. From the outside looking in, it didn't look like a problem, but internally, the unfortunate aspect of opioid addiction is you need more and more, and so. I would seek out, I'd run out of my prescription and then I'd have to go out and buy pills. This is when the pill mills were going on in Florida. there was no Casper. You could literally go from doctor to doctor to get prescribed. And so that's how I supported my addiction for about a decade. Finally, the government realized, oh my gosh, we got a problem here. And so they shut everything down, told doctors no more writing prescriptions, no more pill mills. The Sackler family finally started to atone for their sins, which they killed, hundreds of thousands of Americans. But being a full-blown addict at that time, I didn't know, I can remember going to where I would buy pills, and he's like, man, I can't get them anymore, but I have this. And it was a little bag of brown substance, and he had a needle. And he's like, you got to do it like this. And I told myself, I'm not a drug addict for years, until the day that I was so physically sick and dependent upon opiates, I decided to put a needle in my arm. I was 35 before I did that. And it quickly spiraled out of control. So I lost my wife, my job, my kids. I lost everything. I ended up homeless. And I'm talking homeless, not couch surfing, not sleeping in your car. I was living in a homeless camp in Owensboro, Kentucky, adjacent to English Park, living in a tent. I would crawl out of the woods to go commit crimes to get more dope, and so this spiral, this cycle of addiction started for me, which was I'd commit a crime, I'd go to jail, I'd get kicked out to treatment, and go back to the streets, and that for a couple of years that was the only thing I could manage to do was to go to jail, go to treatment, and go back to the streets. Then 2018 got here, and I was absolutely finished. I did not want to continue living the way I was living. Absolutely suicidal every single day. I just didn't have the guts to do anything about it, and I was certain that the drugs would do it anyway. I was at that time doing massive amounts of methamphetamine and opiates and anything in the hopes that this would be enough. I managed to accomplish that in 2018, and I overdosed. I woke up in the hospital 6 days later on a ventilator, where I had 2 nurses and a doctor work harder than I did to get me back into treatment. They bought my bus ticket from Owensboro to Lexington. I made a decision on that bus ride that I was either going to get sober or I was going to die. And I really didn't care which one of those things happened, but one of them had to happen right now. I ended up back in treatment for the 18th time, but I had a different mindset this time. I was going to apply myself and do whatever anyone told me that might help keep me sober. And so I sat on the front row. I listened to people that would bring meetings in, and I made a decision to go to a long-term treatment center, something I had never done in the past. And I ended up at the Shepherd's House in Lexington. And honestly, if you told me to stand in the middle of the road naked because it would help me stay sober one more day, I was willing to do that. My first job was at a car wash. It was super humbling. I hated it, but I was going to be the best damn car washer there was. I just had this drive that no matter what was asked of me, I was going to do my very best at that. Ended up graduating the Shepherd's House, where I was offered a job as a nighttime house manager. I didn't know what to do. I'd been a soldier and a coal miner. I had no skill set, and I didn't want to go back to Western Kentucky. So I for a period of 2 years, worked 2 full-time jobs. I worked at the treatment center at night and worked at a place called AWG, driving a forklift during the day, just hanging on for dear life, trying to make sense of everything. And eventually was promoted to a case management position there, could quit my daytime job, and eventually made vice president of housing at Shepherd's House, where I came in contact with some affluent horse people that, and the daydreaming started. And at night I would go home and write the program for stable recovery. And then, long story short, here we are today.
Yeah. So you finally, after all those trips to programs and things, something clicked, and I hear this story a lot in my work with recovering addicts. Is something happened, and I just finally decided to get sober.
That's it.
And so, what was that for you? What was that about?
I have 4 little girls, that I'd obviously lost contact with. And the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous calls alcoholics egomaniacs with inferiority complexes, and that is so fitting for me. I knew I was capable of doing some good. I knew, but when you are handcuffed to a substance every single day, it's impossible to do that. So, that bus ride, and this sounds cliche or made up, but that bus ride from Owensboro to Lexington, I made a promise to myself. I can remember, there was rain on the window, and but it was it was a spiritual moment for me that I had made a decision that I was going to do everything I could to become a father to my kids, and a good person again, because I knew innately I was a good person. I just did bad things to support a habit. So, I've been working in addiction for almost a decade now, and I wish I could tell you how that happened, why that happened, because I see lots of people come into my facility that have not had that spiritual moment, have not had that aha moment, and they try really hard for a period of time, but because they have a reservation or because they don't fully trust the process, they end up making a mistake and going right back out there. And that's the thing about addiction. None of us sat in 6th grade and raised our hand and said, "Hey, I want to be a junkie when I grow up." But once you have become that, you're going to have to make some very hard choices to get out of it. And the unfortunate fact of the matter is, people like me, if I make a bad choice, some really bad stuff is going to happen. Whereas a normal person, they're afforded that opportunity to make a mistake. When I make a mistake, some really bad stuff could happen. So trying to teach that to the men and women that come into stable recovery is, you have to do it better than you've ever done it before every single day for the rest of your life, or else.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into stable recovery.
Okay.
So let's talk about horses a little bit.
Let's do it.
You said you were getting ready to go to the farm a little bit later this afternoon, and so what prompted you to start this organization?
Frank Taylor. And if anybody knows Frank Taylor, he is a force of nature. He had a family member that was in the facility that I was working at, and when he would come visit that individual, he'd come up to my office and we would just kind of talk. And one day he was sitting there and he was like, "I think I want to do something." And when Frank says that, there's no telling what's coming after that. And he said, "I want to start a school of horsemanship and bring some people out to my farm and teach them how to be horsemen." And I didn't know if he was crazy or genius, really, honestly, because, anybody who knows anything about these thoroughbred farms, they are very nice places that have very expensive horses. So the leap of faith he was going to take to bring criminals, felons, all of these people out to his farm was huge. So we started a pilot program when I was at that other facility. We started with 5 men, and 3 out of the 5 did really well, which is pretty good in addiction,
Yeah.
So I would go home at night and I would start thinking about all the barriers that I faced trying to get sober, all of the different things that if I, had it my way, this is the path to recovery. And in a couple months short time, I had a business proposal, and I approached the Taylor brothers and proposed stable recovery, and they, in the beginning, very reluctantly agreed, but they agreed. But now, we're very proud to say we're on TaylorMade's website. They're very proud to have us, and that's the thing about the purposeful work that involves a horse is, for most of us, we've lost our purpose. We've lost our meaning for life, and so it's if you've never been around a thoroughbred, it is really, really hard to have a bad day. They are empathetic. They're a 1,000-pound animal that doesn't trust you, and so you have to earn that trust. And that's the same thing for drug addicts. We've lost everyone's trust. So there's some effort and action that needs to take place to earn that trust. And so the parallels that run between horses and recovery are apparent. And I get to see that every single day. I get to see people at their very worst within days of being in a barn, feeling better about themselves.
And they may have never had a relationship with anyone or anything in their whole life, right?
Ever, yeah.
And so now they have to take care of this animal. They have to earn trust. They have to, or they could get really hurt.
That's right. Yeah. There's not much room for error when it comes to, if a thoroughbred decides he wants to go this way, he's going that way. And so, yeah, it's remarkable to see, most of our people have never been around horses before. And it's just so awesome to see somebody that was absolutely dead inside. Again, within days, they're starting to feel better about their situation. There's some excitement there. There's some laughter there. And then we can do our work on the recovery side in kind of repairing and rebuilding these human beings from the inside, because that's what it takes. Unfortunately, addiction strips you of everything. And something about these horses puts you back together.
Why is work so important in recovery?
Well, downtime, boredom is a killer. It's not something that we who suffer from addiction do very well with. It's the disease of addiction centers in your brain, and something about the busyness of work. It keeps me from focusing on the guilt, shame, and remorse that led me to where I'm at right now. It allows me to focus on what's going on right in the moment. And again, it's separation from that substance. And really what we're doing is buying time to allow the brain to heal, to allow your body to heal. So any amount of time that is spent outside of thinking about the drug, the life, everything like that, you're winning. You're clocking seconds, and so we're stacking days. And the further we get away from that last use, the more likely that individual is going to have success.
Yeah. This model of giving people jobs who are in recovery it feels like it's growing. Would you agree with that? I mean, there's another business in town that cafe kind of place that gives people chances who are in recovery. Do you see that movement growing?
I hope so. And really, Deviate Kitchen is what you're talking about. And Rob Perez and Frank are really, that's how Frank had the idea to bring people out to the farm. So Rob's, a leader in this, and he's a good friend of mine. And I think this model could work for any industry. It's living together, working together, recovering together. Something about drug addiction, you have got to maintain a fellowship. You've got to have you've got to have good people surrounding you to help you make good decisions. And so I think it could fit for any industry. It just happens to work really well in the restaurant and the horse industry. But I think you could make this work anywhere. Second chances are what these folks need. And there's still a lot of stigma around addiction. A lot of really bad ideas and thoughts. And unfortunately, there's a lot of really bad actors in the recovery field. They have seen this as a means to make money and not as a means to help people. And so, thank God for Rob Perez and Frank Taylor having this idea and allowing the right people to kind of take over and help that it truly comes from the heart, I get to wake up every single day and see somebody get better, and that that is not lost on me. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So I have the greatest job on the earth.
Yeah.
I do.
The way you and I met was a few weeks ago, I guess, at a meeting of there were farm managers, I think, and it was a really interesting meeting. We had you spoke, I spoke, veterinarian spoke, but could you talk about kind of the special challenges in the horse industry around not just addiction but mental health?
Sure. I talked about the stigma, and the horse industry is a little bit behind when it comes to the progression of mental health and substance use and stuff like that. For the longest time, the horse industry has been a work hard, play hard industry where, individuals, as long as you showed up and worked hard during the day, they didn't care what you went home and did as long as you showed up the next day. with the substances that are now on the streets, that has become a problem, with the fentanyl and the opioids and methamphetamines and all that kind of stuff. It's not going home and having a few beers at the bar. These folks are going home and doing substances that instantly they become addicted to. And so the problem has caused a labor crisis in the horse industry. It's caused a labor crisis across many industries. So having that opportunity at the Farm Managers Club, that says a lot about the industry itself wanting to do something about the problem. And that you and I were talking a little bit before this, and for the longest time, the horse industry has been a good old boys club that hear no evil, see no evil. But they've changed, and they're starting to change. And unfortunately, I think a lot of the more prominent owners and stuff like that, they had family members that became stricken, and they're like, what is going on here? But when you talk about jockeys, and they have to make weight, so there's drugs that help with that, which can cause eating disorders and all sorts of other things. For the longest time, it was do whatever you got to do to make weight so you can get up on that horse and ride a race. And now we're unfortunately seeing suicide has really ramped up amongst jockeys, depression, things like that. So, the problem got stuck right in front of them. And so thankfully they're willing to invite the right people in and try to make a difference in that.
Yeah, that's great. And your program is expanding, I think, right? Tell me about, what do you dream about for stable recovery?
I'm asked that question a lot. Well, in 3 years we've expanded exponentially, which is unfortunate because the problem is great. I will never have enough beds for people. It's just not ever going to happen. But what we've seen work really well are horse farms that are willing to provide housing on their farms, which they do for their workers anyway. Windstar and Keeneland, Juddmont, they've all agreed to do that. So I think, possibly the future will be, kind of satellite stable recoveries on site at these facilities that create, kind of miniature fellowships where men and women are working together, recovering together. We've had offers from California to Ireland to start growing, and we have to. Frank and I think alike, and I just want to help everybody and take over the world. But we have to be smart about this because here's, and I briefly mentioned it. Recovery has become a business, and in some aspects, there are people getting hurt because they're not receiving the care they deserve, and so. The most important thing to me about stable recovery was individual attention, making sure that every single individual that graced our doorstep received the attention they deserve. Treatment, I'll say it. We've been doing treatment the same way for 30 years and it doesn't work. We throw this blanket over it and we hope, and it will work for 2 or 3 people in a group of 20. But what about the 17 that it didn't work for, right? So that's a huge difference with stable recovery is every single individual, their needs are going to be met. And that's a wide array of needs from court stuff to health stuff to dental stuff. There's all sorts of problems we come in with. And we're willing to spend the time and the money to do those things. And that's why we're seeing a lot of success at stable recovery.
That's great. So people actually, they sort of start in residential treatment with you, and then they step up to...
Not with us. So we outsource that.
Okay.
You have to complete a residential program before you come to us.
Okay.
That may be a move we make in the future. If we can do it right, that's something we would do. But yes, you have to be removed from the substance for a period of time. 28 days is what we like. And then you come to us and... case management will take over from there, and we're going to help you get your license and social security card and all that kind of stuff, get you into a primary care physician, get you into a therapist, and basically just stabilize that human being and make them start to feel whole again. And then we'll get you out to the farm and let you start work. We're very different. We pay our individuals to participate in school. So there's some institutions that require work but pay very little, or they'll give you a stipend or something like that. And in my opinion, that's unfair. These folks are performing a job every single day, and so they deserve to be paid for that. And that actually helps rebuild, that person again. They know that they're earning something, and then they get that paycheck and they can pay off a bill or pay some child support or whatever it is. So we've seen that's a very important aspect of our program, and these people deserve all the help they can get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Christian, I'm so grateful for your work, and I'm really thankful for that bus ride and that decision that you made there, because you could have easily been a statistic, and this wonderful idea you have could have just died with you. And so I'm thankful for you, and just the good that you're bringing in the world.
Thanks,
really
Blake.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, Blake. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, this has been Dr. Blake Jones on the Guided Podcast, and I wish you well along your journey.